Father Casimir Cypher was a humble priest from Wisconsin who suffered brutal martyrdom in Honduras. He was born Michael Cypher in Wisconsin, USA in 1941. He had 8 brothers and 3 sisters, and his family lived a very simple life on a cattle farm. As a child, he was a mediocre student, but he loved to work with his hands. He was relatively absent-minded and frequently misplaced things. He left school after 8th grade in order to study at a Franciscan minor seminary, taking the name Casimir at age 18. His brother Bernard also joined the Franciscan order, taking the religious name Cyprian. After his ordination, he felt called to serve in the missions of Latin America, but he knew no Spanish. He was assigned to a parish in California to help him learn the language. One of his parishioners there was the novelist Leonard Wibberley, who initially viewed Father Casimir as dull and stupid. Father Casimir was said to be kind of unkempt, and that earned him the nickname Father Columbo after the television detective. Wibberley eventually came to realize that Father Casimir was a humble and compassionate priest. One day he offered his hand to Father Casimir and later said, "He was charitable enough to take it, though I deserved to have him ignore me, for I had been a pompous ass in the way I had treated him." He was sent to Gualaco, Honduras in 1973, where it was hoped that he could help teach at the local seminary. Unfortunately, his Spanish was still poor, so instead he was assigned the difficult task of visiting remote mountain villages. He would spend weeks at a time hiking mountain trails and bringing the sacraments to poor families. He learned how to communicate with the local people and loved sharing in their culture. When he would occasionally return to Gualaco, he spent a lot of time conversing with Mike Gable, a lay missionary there. Gable was impressed with Father Casimir's spiritual depth and his skill at poetry, and he had shared a lot of anecdotes about his friendship with Father Casimir. One of my favorites involves a peasant worker who brought his injured son to see them for first aid. Mike Gable said, "The son was heavily bleeding from a severe and deep machete cut while cutting sugar cane. It was slit from his wrist to his elbow. I couldn't stop the hemorrhage, so I yelled for Casimir's help. Nothing was working. Blood kept shooting out. Finally, Casimir suggested, 'Mike, let's try saying an Our Father together.' After praying our hearts out, we opened our eyes and we were shocked. The boy's bleeding had stopped, and he was alive. After cleaning and taping up his wound, I turned to Casimir exclaiming, 'Can you believe what just happened here? That kid should have bled to death.' He turned to me and simply said, 'Michael, miracles still happen.' I'll never forget his powerful faith, which empowers me yet today." Gable and Father Casimir also discussed the poverty in Honduras and the conflict between poor farmers and the rich cattlemen who dominated the region. The farmers had recently begun to form peasant unions, and the cattlemen held the church responsible. Casimir was later transferred to San Esteban, where parishioners suffered the same economic conditions. He said, "We're trying to help the kids get to high school and promote vocations to the priesthood and religious life. Since people here are poor in all aspects, it's a little tough. We're always short of funds." His work was very stressful, and in 1974 he told a friend, "I've been sort of sick for a while, physically, mentally, and spiritually." He developed an infection in his bloodstream and had to fly back to the US for treatment. While back in the US, Mike Gable urged Father Casimir not to return to Honduras because the situation between the poor farmers and the cattlemen had become so tense. Father Casimir told him, "I can't abandon my people at this time. I know there's trouble, but I have to go back." He returned to Honduras and continued his work. One day, in June 1975, he headed into the city of Juticalpa on the same day that a large agrarian reform demonstration was planned. While Father Casimir wasn't even aware of the demonstration before it occurred, he did hold a mass that some of the participants attended before the march began. After the mass was ended, the Honduran military attacked. Father Casimir was captured along with another priest, Father Ivan Betancourt, who is pictured here. Ivan was a 35-year-old priest from Colombia who was in the area to visit his family. Both priests were stripped of their clothes and subjected to brutal tortures before being killed. Some of the union leaders and farmers, including women, were killed as well, reportedly in gruesome and horrifying ways. The event is now known as the Horcones Massacre, and according to one researcher, it's the most brutal persecution of the church she's ever covered. Some of the perpetrators were brought to justice, and they served a single year in jail for their crimes. At the time of his death, Father Casimir was only 34 and had been a missionary for 2 years. He is still remembered fondly in Honduras, and clergy there are pushing for his canonization. According to the Franciscan Voice, Friar Casimir was a true son of Saint Francis. His life was characterized by simplicity, personal poverty, and a good sense of humor. He painted, wrote poetry, and loved serving the poor and disadvantaged. May his example inspire us to love and to serve Christ in the poor and marginalized.